all the things that I talked about, the inversion of that, if we keep doing these things, we are inevitably going to get better at art. Hey there. In today's video, we're going to talk about how I reprogrammed my brain to learn art and got better at it, and I still keep on improving by applying these 7 principles. Now, I'm going to talk about them in a way that will sound counterintuitive because there's this concept called inversion thinking where you look at any concept in an opposite perspective. Because our brain is trained to actually find threats, we are able to find threats more easily, and then you shift that to actually figure out the things that you should be doing. So, for example, let's say if I want to make sure that I got really bad health, I would make sure that I never get any exercise in. I will make sure that I eat the worst food possible, and I will make sure that I sleep the worst. Like I get really like 4 or 5 hours of inconsistent sleep all the time. So if I make sure all 3 of these things are just messed up, I will make sure that my health is completely going downhill. How I can inverse that by the concept of inversion thinking is I make sure that I eat pretty healthy food most of the times. I make sure that I'm getting consistently 7 to 8 hours of sleep most of the time. And I make sure that I'm getting 4 to 5 hours of exercise in every week. That's how the whole concept of inversion thinking works. And this is something that I have applied to my life and have seen insane results. So hopefully you guys find it helpful as well. So the first thing that you need to make sure that you never do so your art keeps on sucking and you never get better at it is you never learn from references. Make sure you never learn from references, because if you actually do and if you actually copy references, you might get better at art. So that's one thing that you have to do. Never learn from references, never go on Pinterest and find references that you like and try to copy them, because if you do, you might actually get better at art. So that's the first rule. Second rule to make sure that you never get better at art and never improve is to always ignore the fundamentals, and you never follow and learn any fundamental at once. You have to make sure that happens in order for you not to improve. Because God forbid you know proportions before moving on to drawing your OC, because that's not gonna help at all, right? That's the second thing you kind of have to make sure. Rule number 3 to make sure that you never get better at art or at anything ever again is to never stick to one thing. Always keep on jumping from one thing to another. First thing you're learning is figures, next thing you're learning is portraits, another thing that you're learning is shading, right? So always keep on jumping and never stick to one thing, because you might actually get better at it. So the idea is to stay as inconsistent as possible, so you again never get better at anything. The number 4 thing that you have to make sure so you never get better at art again is never get feedback. Always assume you're right. Always assume that you know better than the other person that you are asking for feedback from, and always get defensive about the feedback, right? Because all these small things, they're going to stack up and they're going to make sure that you never actually see any improvement in your art, right? Because if there is some person who is able to give you feedback, first, you never ask for it, and second, you get really defensive whenever they give you any feedback, even on the smallest or even on the biggest things possible, right? So number 4 to make sure you never get better at art is to always get defensive and never ask for feedback. So number 5 thing to always make sure that you always keep staring at your sketchbook, never knowing what to draw, because in your head you have this imposter syndrome. And to always keep this imposter syndrome in check, you always have to follow this number 5 rule, which is go on social media, scroll through all the shorts and Instagrams and all the TikToks of other creators, and never actually create your own stuff, right? You have to make sure that this happens. For example, for me, when I struggle to actually draw art, I always make sure that I go on Instagram and I keep scrolling for 2-3 hours, and I just feel like shit at the end, because that's really what happens. It just hacks your dopamine system, and now your brain is not able to get all of this dopamine from the instant hits of gratification from these shorts, and it's always searching for more dopamine. This reminds me of a story that I discussed with my team last month, where we were actually discussing how consuming is actually really bad if you're going for creating, right? You have to make sure that this ratio, always creating, stays more than consuming. And right now I'm talking for real, so it's not the inversion theory. I'm talking for real right now. Is you have to make sure that always the creative stays kind of lower than the amount you're consuming. And that's how you will always be a little bit motivated, and your brain would not be like fully fried up from consuming all of these shorts. And why I'm saying it is because I've went through it. So hopefully anyone who's watching this video finds this helpful and understands that if you are a creative person, if you want to create good art, better art, if you want to put your ideas out there, you're not consuming more than you're creating, right? Never let this graph be like that. And I still struggle with that, and that's why I'm sharing this one. So going back to the concept of inversion thinking, whenever you want to make sure that you never create and you are always stuck in your head, make sure that you always consume more than you create, right? So never do that. And number 6 step to always make sure that you never get better at art again, or even if you are intermediate, that you never really improve more than the level that you're at right now, is to never have a goal or a plan to follow for your art. From my story from 2020, I actually had this thing where I was trying to study all of the figures from YouTube. I was watching Proco, I was watching Marco Bucci, I was watching Mark Brunet, all of the big YouTubers, I was watching them, but I would just draw some random stuff and never really see improvement in my art because what I was drawing is just like a bunch of muscles and I wasn't even able to see any improvement in art. But once I actually found a goal that I wanted to improve at, which is number 2 point, is always stick to one thing. I found portraits to be the goal that I want to improve at. So I stuck to portraits for 6 to 12 months and I actually got insane amount of progress in just portraits instead of me running from figures to shading to digital and then portraits again. So that was one lesson that I really learned. Nobody cares what it is. You have to decide what it is for you, and then you can make that goal and go all in. So that's how you can actually get better at it. To always make sure that you never get good at art, never have a goal or plan and always keep jumping on from one thing to another, because that's what I was doing in 2020 and I never really improved. 7th rule is never actually put it into practice. Never actually take out a sketchbook and draw, because what's going to happen when you actually draw is you might just improve, right? Make sure you never do that. So now what I'm going to do is actually go through all of these points and invert them. So applying the inversion theory, you have to make sure that you keep all of these 7 things in mind, so you inevitably win, you inevitably get better at art, and you inevitably keep. So applying the inversion theory to all these 7 points that I talked about, always make sure you follow some references, because your brain is still not capable of drawing from imagination. Kim Jong-gi was able to draw from imagination because he drew 10 plus, 20 plus years of his life just looking at things in real life. So always make sure you draw from imagination. Always make sure you draw from the references. Second thing is you follow the fundamentals. You follow proportions, perspective, lines, shading, color. You learn these fundamentals and you follow the fundamentals. Third thing is choose and stick to drawing one thing for a specific period of time. Not always keep on jumping from drawing your OCs to drawing landscapes to drawing portraits to drawing figures, because that's not going to help you improve. Fourth thing is always ask for feedback from the people who are better than you and be wholehearted about it, right? Even if the person giving you feedback might be wrong, you can just take the feedback and not get defensive about it and actually try to improve and assume that, oh, this person might know something more that I do not know, right? The fifth thing that you have to make sure is go on social media. I don't think we can live without social media right now, because everyone is on there. Everything is happening on social media. There are no news. There are no newspapers, right? We have to go on social media, but what you have to make sure is that your ratio of consumption is actually lower than your ratio of creation. So whenever you go on social media, go there to consume, but then take that content that you consumed and put it into creation. And number 6 thing that you always have to make sure is to always have a goal or a plan to improve at your art. You have to make a goal, whether you're going to get better at portraits, whether you're going to get better at figures, or you're going to get better at drawing landscapes, etc., right? You define your goal, but you have to define this goal. You have to have a plan, right? Find someone, find some coaching courses, find a mentor who actually knows how to do this thing step by step and who can actually guide you throughout all of these steps towards the goal that you want, right? So that's number 6. And number 7, which is very simple and not many people do it, is actually drawing, actually putting your pencil to the paper, actually putting your stylus to the pad. Not many people do it, and that's why you just don't get better. And I've went through this myself as well. I would keep on watching Angel Ganop's video. I would keep on watching Sam Desart's video. I would put any YouTuber over here, put any short creator over here, and I'll just keep on consuming and actually never get to draw. So you have to put in time in actually drawing, right? The amount of time that you put on behind the screen drawing in front of your sketchbook drawing is going to trump any talent that any guy has, any knowledge that you can put into words is going to trump all of that. In art, mileage is one of the most important things that you can build consistently over time that will trump anything that any guy ever says. So you have to put on the time behind your screen, you have to put on the time on your sketchbook and actually draw. Otherwise, you just will never get better at art, which is the whole point of art is actually drawing, right? So make sure you draw. And to sum up the whole video, I have went through all of these things myself, and that's why I'm kind of sharing them over here, and I still struggle with them, especially the consumption versus creation part. So let me know what you'd like me to talk about in the next video, and this is all for this one, guys. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.